It's a mild January morning in 1888, the kind of day where the sun hangs high over the Nebraska prairie, warming the earth just enough that kids are running around in light jackets, laughing as they head off to school. And farmers are out in their fields thinking maybe winter's finally loosening its grip after a tough season. But then, without any warning, the sky darkens, like someone's pulled a curtain over the world. Winds howl in from the northwest at speeds that rip roofs off barns. Temperatures plunge 40 degrees in hours, turning that balmy air into a frozen hell where visibility drops to zero and snow whips around like 1,000 knives, trapping hundreds of people out in the open, many of them children who never make it home, their small bodies lost in drifts that pile up overnight, and in the end, over 200 souls perish in what history remembers as the Schoolhouse Blizzard, one of the deadliest storms to ever hit the American frontier, a tragedy that could have been just another footnote in the harsh tale of pioneer life. Except for one man whose crazy idea turned mockery into salvation. And that's the story we're diving into today, the real account of Friedrich Mueller, an immigrant from Germany who arrived in the Great Plains with nothing but his wits and a stubborn streak. Settling in a small town near Dakota Territory, where everyone else was busy building tall wooden houses and fancy barns to show off their American dreams, but Friedrich, he saw things differently. Drawing from old European ways where folks dug into the earth for warmth, and he started excavating a hillside, carving out what looked like a giant burrow, layering it with sod and timber, insulating it deep underground so it blended right into the landscape, hidden from casual eyes and the townsfolk. Oh, they had a field day with it, calling him the mole behind his back and sometimes to his face, joking that he was digging his own grave or building a home for rabbits, not a family, because who in their right mind would live like a groundhog when progress meant standing tall above the prairie, with glass windows and painted doors? But Friedrich ignored the laughs, the pointed fingers from neighbors like old Mr. Harlan, who boasted about his 2-story frame house shipped in from Chicago, or the schoolteacher Miss Ellis who shook her head and said it was no place to raise children, too dark and damp, a step backward from civilization. Yet Friedrich kept at it through the summer of 1887, reinforcing the walls with stones he hauled from the river, adding a clever ventilation system with hidden chimneys that let smoke escape without giving away the location, and even stocking it with preserved foods, blankets, and lanterns, turning this so-called folly into a self-contained fortress against whatever nature might throw. And as autumn turned the leaves gold, the mockery only grew louder at town meetings where folks speculated he de-wasted his savings on a hole in the ground that would flood come spring. But Friedrich just smiled quietly, knowing from stories back home how earth could shield against the worst colds, how it held heat like a mother's embrace, and little did they know that as the first flurries dusted the ground that winter, something monstrous was brewing far to the north. A storm system gathering strength that would test every structure, every boast, and every laugh, leaving you wondering just how quickly pride can turn to desperation when the winds start screaming. Now, let's step back into that fateful day, January 12, 1888, when the morning broke unusually warm across the Great Plains. Temperatures climbing into the 40s, melting the thin layer of snow that had blanketed the fields, fooling everyone into thinking spring had come early, so farmers like Harlan let their cattle roam farther than usual. Kids skipped to school without coats, giggling about the mud squishing under their boots, and even Friedrich ventured out to chop extra wood. But up in his hidden shelter, he noticed the air felt heavy, the birds unusually quiet, a subtle warning from nature that he heeded by double-checking his supplies, stacking more hay bales against the entrance for insulation, while down in town, people went about their business, oblivious to the Arctic front barreling down from Canada, a massive low-pressure system colliding with warm, moist air, creating a blizzard of epic proportions. And by noon, the first gusts hit, but it wasn't gradual. No, it slammed in like a freight train, winds gusting over 60 miles an hour, driving snow horizontally, blotting out the sun in minutes, and temperatures crashing to below zero so fast that sweat on brows turned to ice, catching hundreds off guard. Teachers dismissing classes early, but too late for many children who wandered lost in the whiteout, their cries swallowed by the roar. Families huddling in their wooden homes only to feel the walls shake as drafts seeped through cracks, freezing water in buckets solid, and out on the open prairie. Travelers and homesteaders perished by the dozens, their bodies found days later curled up in futile attempts at warmth. But back at Friedrich's place, as the storm raged outside, the earth-sheltered dugout held steady, its thick sod roof muffling the howls, the ground itself acting as a natural blanket, keeping the interior a steady 40 degrees even as the outside world dipped to -40. And inside, Friedrich gathered his wife and 2 young sons, lighting the stove that vented smoke invisibly, sharing stories to pass the time, unaware yet that neighbors were starting to panic. Like Harlan, whose fancy house lost its roof in the first hour, forcing him and his family to burrow under furniture. Or Miss Ellis at the schoolhouse, where she tied ropes around the waists of her pupils to guide them home. But many lines snapped in the gale, leading to heartbreaking losses that would scar the community forever. And as night fell, the blizzard showed no mercy, piling drifts 20 feet high, burying wagons and livestock alive, turning the landscape into a frozen graveyard. Yet whispers began to spread among survivors who made it through the initial onslaught. Rumors of Friedrich's grave perhaps being the one safe haven. And as the second day dawned with the storm still unrelenting, desperate knocks echoed at hidden doors, leaving you on the edge, pondering if the man they ridiculed would open his arms or let the cold teach its own lesson. As the blizzard finally began to wane on January 14th, the sun peeking through like a hesitant visitor, the full horror unfolded across the plains. Search parties trudging through chest-deep snow to find frozen forms huddled in ditches or against fence posts. Entire families wiped out in what should have been sturdy homes, the death toll climbing to 235, with tales of heroism and heartbreak, like the young teacher who sacrificed herself to shield her students, or farmers who tied themselves to their barns only to be buried alive. But amid the devastation, Friedrich's hidden shelter emerged, not just intact, but as a beacon. Having sheltered not only his family through the 3D ordeal without a single shiver, the Earth's thermal mass absorbing daytime warmth and releasing it slowly at night. The low profile dodging the worst winds that tore at taller structures, and word spread quickly as survivors stumbled upon it. Harlan himself, arriving frostbitten and humbled, begging entry for his wife who was on the brink, and Friedrich, without a word of "I told you so," swung open the reinforced door, ushering in over a dozen neighbors, sharing his stockpiled soup and blankets, turning what was mocked as a burrow into a communal lifeline where body heat and shared stories kept spirits alive until rescue came. And in the weeks that followed, as the town rebuilt, attitudes shifted, folks starting to dig their own earth logic, recognizing how ancient techniques trumped modern vanity in the face of nature's wrath. Friedrich becoming a quiet legend, not for seeking glory, but for proving that wisdom often hides in the overlooked. A lesson echoed in later frontier innovations, like sod houses that dotted the prairies, saving countless more in future storms. And today, as we look back on the Schoolhouse Blizzard, it's a reminder that progress isn't always upward, but sometimes downward, into the ground where safety lies, blending human ingenuity with the planet's own defenses. So if this tale of ridicule turned to respect has you thinking about forgotten survival smarts, hit that like button, subscribe for more real history stories that hit home, and drop a comment below sharing what old wisdom you'd bring back today. Let's keep these lessons alive.